Hello, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Sean Lowery Show. If you're in your car, if you're doing the dishes, if you're just walking around or walking your dog, I don't know when you listen to podcasts, but I appreciate you being here. If it's your first time listening, welcome. It's always exciting having new people, and I've been connecting with some new people. I love seeing that. And this is my 24th episode in 24 weeks. And I'm an entrepreneur, and I'm currently building my e-commerce business, United Monograms. We just had our biggest year ever in terms of all of the metrics, sales, everything. So that's been great. And I started this podcast because honestly, my brain's always on and I got tired of listening. And I wanted to start talking and bring my unique perspective into the world and connect with new people, all the listeners. And right now, I'm doing a 4-part series and I'm reviewing this past decade that's coming to an end. These are my opinions on the decade review, and I have done my homework. I feel a little qualified to talk about this because instead of listening, I've been going and researching and looking at all the different headlines from 2010 to today. And I've been thinking about that, and I've been thinking about the stories from the past decade, and I really have been reflecting on it because I put work into this podcast, baby. So that's what makes me kind of qualified to think about it, but with business. So this episode is about business and technology from the past decade. And when you look at that, there's so many topics you could cover. So I'm picking the few to stand out to me. And my format for the last two, I've had an episode about sports from the past decade, and last week an episode about politics from the last decade. And the format is that I've been given a little bit of a big picture, which is just kind of entertainment. It's fun to look back on. And then I'm talking about the things that kind of stand out to me from my perspective, from the Sean Lowery Show perspective. But for business, I could look at this from the perspective of the stock market, small business, more like my type of startup business, careers. But I'm going to do a little bit of all of that in this episode. So the first thing is just a little big picture, look back at the technology and business from a fun perspective. So the stock market is up 290% over the past decade. It's at an all-time high. It's been a decade of booming economy in America. So that is just something to think about with all of this. So that's great. It's given a lot of people and companies time to just grow and do smart things. And that's amazing. So Amazon is up 1,300%. And the biggest stock of the decade, the number one most successful public company, if you're going to invest your money in 2009, 2010 to today, is Netflix. It's up like 4,000%. So yeah, obviously we started watching TV differently this decade. Our phones used to be smaller in the beginning of the decade, and they actually got kind of bigger. Apple started making bigger phones because we're watching TV and treating our phones like computers almost. And there's been, the beginning of the decade, there was FaceTime, which was first only over Wi-Fi, but now you can FaceTime anywhere. So the technology has just been amazing. We had BlackBerries at the beginning of the decade. Everyone has iPhones now. And the smartest thing iPhone does is have the blue text messages because, I hate when people have green text messages, which means they have an Android or some other type of device. When they have green text messages, it ruins group chats. It doesn't show the red things. You can't give it a thumbs up. And, that's the worst. That's like the main reason I have an iPhone, because of the blue text messages. But it's been a great age for entertainment, Chromecast and streaming and putting things from our phone to the TV. It's been amazing. And just everything has gone well for big companies in stock market, technology companies. Facebook had an amazing decade. They went public in 2012. Twitter went public in 2012. Snapchat went public. And one of my favorite stories is when Facebook, in around 2015, 2016, they offered Evan Spiegel, the CEO of Snapchat, $3 billion to buy the company, and they turned it down. And that was a badass move. That's the one thing that stands out to me from the decade. That was such a badass move. They could have had $3 billion to be acquired by Facebook, but they said no. And then they went public. And I looked it up recently. His net worth is about $4 billion. So it was a smart move. I mean, they went public. But the funny thing is that Snapchat is kind of struggling right now at this moment because Instagram, which is Facebook, which is the company that offered to buy them, took their main feature and put it on Instagram. The Instagram stories are kind of like Snapchat, basically. There's the story message where you can put up for everyone to see. You can just send messages right to people. They come down in 24 hours. So that was kind of their payback to Snapchat. And we'll see how that plays out over the next decade. That's just a fun story. So it's been a great decade, from Blackberries to iPhones. iPads came this decade. Steve Jobs died in 2011, the Apple CEO. And Apple hasn't really had anything that great besides for the phone, which is seriously the most amazing thing ever. But recently, even I think equally as amazing, is their AirPods. AirPods are a game changer, and they're so amazing. If you don't have AirPods, you're missing out so much. And I've talked with my friends before about, they said, who cares? What's the big difference? And then they get them, and they're like, wow, I see the difference in how amazing these AirPods are. You know, you take it out of your ear, and whatever's on the phone stops. You put it back in, and it plays. It's so smooth. It works great. Great sound. You can move your arms around. You never have to hit it. The charging's easy. AirPods are one of the most amazing things. So between streaming and AirPods and iPads and iPhones and the stock market being up 290%, it's been an amazing decade for just general business and technology. And that's so fun to see where it keeps changing and keeps going. So the second thing that I want to focus on as a story from this past decade kind of falls into my area here of selling products, but it's the absolute fall of retail stores. All right, so I just pulled up a list here of just some. There's just some of the companies that went bankrupt, absolutely bankrupt over this past decade. All right, so 2010 was the start. Blockbuster, Borders, Forever 21, Dress Barn, Barney's New York, Payless, Jamboree, Sears officially went bankrupt this decade, Mattress Firm, Bon-Ton, Toys R Us, True Religion, Radio Shack, The Limited, American Apparel, Aeropostale, PacSun, Sports Authority, City Sports, Quicksilver. I feel like I just read a mall brochure because those are all like mall type stores. But business has changed and people buy things differently. And obviously that's one of the main stories from the decade, is that people are shopping online now, which is why Amazon's amazing. And a company like mine can do a couple million in sales from starting online, and that being the core of what we are. The problem with all of these retail stores is that they built up the core of their businesses. Their whole foundation of who they are as a company was based upon traffic, foot traffic from people. So being in malls and having a great model for stores. That is how the companies, that's how they were. That's how they were built. And that's why they all failed. And it changed so fast for them. And they were just like, oh my God. And think about the overhead and the cost that goes into having all these stores and keeping the lights on. I sell products, and the thought of retail pops into my head once in a while. I had a business advisor who strongly advised going into retail, and I was just like, no. But I just get sick of the thought of retail. I can't imagine having the lights on and having the staff there and then having them just twiddle their thumbs and wait for somebody to walk in. Selling online is so much better. It's better for the consumer because it gets shipped to them. And you don't have to go in. And it just makes such a big difference. And that's why these companies all went bankrupt or failed. There still might have some stores out there. If you still see a store from that list that I read, it's possible that they still have like one or two stores, but they all went bankrupt or completely out of business, and they're just liquidating their inventory. So Shopify stock, Shopify has been one of the best companies of the decade. That's where I host my e-commerce site. There's a couple of places where you can, if you want to start an e-commerce store and start selling things in your basement and shipping them from your basement, Shopify is basically the go-to place for that now. It's a great online store, and it really allows you to scale. Kylie Jenner uses Shopify. We use Shopify, and someone who sells one thing can use Shopify. It has a wide range of how you can grow. It's an amazing company. They went public in May 2015, and their stock is up 1,400% over this past decade. So Shopify is where it's at because people are getting this. They're selling online. And it's crazy to think about how all these companies failed because, I mean, Walmart had some trouble with the loss of foot traffic, but they're really, really working on their e-commerce, and they're getting back and better with e-commerce. And they actually have a platform where people can sell on Walmart now. And I haven't got into it, but they're adjusting. And see, Amazon was built as an e-commerce company, and then you hear about them buying Radio Shacks and having a little retail stores and buying Whole Foods and getting into retail. And people are saying like, yeah, retail's not going away. And no, retail's not going away, but if it was 80% of where transactions were made, by the end of this next decade, it's going to be where like 10% of the transactions are made. So it still exists. And yeah, Amazon wants a little piece of it, but don't get confused. Amazon started as an e-commerce company, and that's the foundation of their company, and that's why they're successful. And somebody like Payless Shoes or Borders, their foundation was not online. Their foundation was being a foot traffic retail store. And in this quick period of only 10 years, so much of the consumer behavior shifted to shopping online that they weren't able to shift fast enough to be able to handle it and start selling online. And you know, there's some companies that did. In 2010, I think Netflix was shipping DVDs to people's houses. But they were smart enough to shift, and they knew what their goal was. It was to give consumers content to watch on their TV. And when streaming came around, they were the first ones there because they were on top of it. So that's the lesson to take away from this decade is, one, don't start a retail store. Just don't. It's stupid to start. There's so much overhead, and you can sell so much more online. I started in the basement. I sell so much online, and it's amazing. And I think if I had a retail store, it never would have happened. I would have had my mind all confused about how to run a business. So my foundation is e-commerce, and I think that's healthy going in to the next decade for any entrepreneur who wants to start a business. Make your foundation e-commerce, selling online, shipping, learn the logistics of either shipping or sending your products to a third-party warehouse. Know how to deliver your product to your customer without having them come buy it at a cash register. If that's the foundation of your business, you're going to be much healthier, obviously, going into the next decade. Now, the other lesson is be ready to shift. If you talk to a Dress Barn or a American Apparel or a Aeropostale employee in 2008, 2009, they weren't thinking about this internet that was coming. They weren't thinking about this rise of e-commerce. So they just weren't thinking, and they got blindsided. So e-commerce is where it's at right now if you want to sell a product. And just be ready. I don't know what it is, but if there's a shift coming, being on top of that shift is something that will always help you be successful in business and life, really, being ahead of it. So that's what's cool about looking back on this decade in all these different elements is I'm getting a chance to reflect. And yes, I'm spreading the message and talking to all of you guys, but it's been great for me too because I really get to think about the things that shifted. And then if you understand history as history's happening in the current, you can see it more from that lens, and that helps you be more prone to seeing shifts and being ahead of trends and being one of these companies or one of these people who don't get blindsided by the shift and get lost in the dust. One of these people who innovate early and lead going forward. And that is the takeaway from the fall of retail. If e-commerce shopping for some reason doesn't make any sense in 5-6 years, I don't want to go out of business because I'm an e-commerce company. I want to be one of the people who has immediately shifted to wherever else products are sold. So that is so interesting that over this past 10 years, all those companies went bankrupt. Malls are like abandoned now all over the country. And it's crazy how much people are getting packages on their doorsteps instead of pulling in their driveway and walking out of the car with shopping bags. In the next decade, there will be, imagine that, doorsteps with boxes instead of people walking around with all those shopping bags in their hand. You know, you have like 4 shopping bags from this store in your left hand, 4 in your right hand from this store. That is historic. We can look back on that now, honestly. That's the way to think. All right, and the last part about this last decade of business and technology is something that is kind of looking ahead a little bit, and I think it's so important for every single person to think about, even if you're not an entrepreneur, and that is automation. Automation. So I've talked about driverless cars before and how obsessed I am with them, and that's just an example of one of the things that's coming, and it's inevitable. McDonald's, they are working very hard on having screens at every McDonald's where you just select your order from the screen, in which case you don't need the cashier there, which is automation. And McDonald's said at any moment they can kind of snap their finger and put this automation into place. Think about that. At McDonald's, where you go, you hit the buttons on the screen, and then maybe one person brings you the order or just brings it up to the stand instead of having all the people there taking your order. That's happening. Andrew Yang, one of my favorite politicians, his whole pitch for president in this next election is that we need to be on top of all these jobs getting automated away. Because people who are truck drivers, people who are retail workers, people who are fast food workers, these are some of the most popular jobs in America. These jobs are going away. And with technology, automation is getting easier. My company, my small company, we had to let someone go because we have thousands of orders and everyone has to make, and every order needs its own file since we sell monograms and they're all personalized files. And we had somebody who was making hand files, ABC, EDF, whatever the monogram was, putting it in to Photoshop or this other program we have and saving it and then putting it on a USB. I was like, this is ridiculous. We need a way to automate this. And I set my mind to automating it, having no idea what was possible with the technology. Long story short, it's all automated now. So if you set your mind to automating something in this world, it can be done now. It's like magic. Like, I don't even get it. But automation is coming. And what can every single person take away from this in this next decade? Is your job safe? Is your job safe? Think about it. Your job. You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to be early in your career. You don't have to be late in your career. Is your job safe? Because so many jobs are going to get automated away. Don't be one of those people who's blindsided. You know, it's okay if you think about it and your job definitely will be automated away. You have time. Just get yourself in position where you're not totally screwed over. So think about that. I pulled up a list of some of just the most popular jobs in America. And I just wrote them here and I'm just running through this thinking, are these jobs safe or not with automation over the next decade? So here are some of the ones I think are safe. A lawyer, a policeman. We're not going to have a robot police. And general managers, like, so a store, right? If a store has 8 people and then it has a general manager, I think the general manager's job is safe. Then those 8 people who do the labor, they might not be safe. But I think a general manager position is still safe because we're going to need some people to run the more automated systems. Retail sales, it'll be a smaller segment for sure if there's still a lot of retail shopping. But driver, gone. Bartender, gone. Cashier, fast food, gone. Those are obviously going to be gone. If you have one of those jobs, and hey, if you're going to retire in 5 years, you might be good. Just hang on for 5 years. But you need to readjust if you're in one of those jobs. And here's are some that I'm not sure. So waitress is interesting because I don't think restaurants are going away. People love to get out of the house to get food. But a lot of those chains like Applebee's or Denny's, I think I've seen it. I don't know where, but they have the little thing at the table where you can put your order in. So I haven't seen that really catching on, but that's something that would take a waitress's job away. There might just be 1 or 2 food runners, waitresses, I don't know, customer service representative. That's kind of already been automated, and you are always trying to get to the person at the end when you're talking about customer service. So customer service rep, I don't know, janitors, teachers. Teachers are interesting. I think teachers will always need, but it'll be very easy to educate children through FaceTime or TV or something in the future. So I don't know. Are schools going to be like retail stores where we don't need all that physical space? Interesting thought. I don't know. I mean, I think kids should go to a place and interact with each other. So teachers are safe, but think about how the education is going to be delivered to people. And maybe you can be on top of the next trend with that. Security guards, factory workers, electricians, food prep, landscaping. These are some of the most popular jobs in America. And you have to think about it. I don't know all the details of these jobs and these industries, but you do if you're in it. So think about what is coming with automation and what is physically possible. And if your job can be automated away, think ahead. Think maybe you can be the person that brings the automation into the business and the one that manages it. That could be safe. Or try to get a different position where you're always going to need a human brain. Just position yourself where you're not going to be screwed over by automation. I think that's a great tip for every single person going into this next decade. But It has been an amazing decade. Oh my God. I've started my business. I've done over $10 million for my mom's basement, and I'm just getting started. And I am just an average example. There's so many businesses that have started. The stock market is up 290%. Obviously, JCPenney and all these companies that are public, Gap, that are retail based, haven't been doing as well. But you know what? Maybe they can adjust, close some stores, figure out what works. So many things are going to change into the next decade, and I can't wait to just be on top of them. It's so fun thinking about business and technology. This is my favorite thing. And only so much of it applies to my business, but that's why I like to look at it from this perspective and talk with you guys about all the things to come. So automation, the fail of retail, going from Blackberries to iPhones, streaming things from our phone to the TV, having entertainment at our fingertips. This has been the most amazing decade for business. This has been the most amazing decade for everything. And it's been so fun reflecting on it. And I have one episode left in this 4-part decade series, and that'll be next week. So I appreciate you guys listening. And honestly, life is amazing. Life is good. Enjoy it. And just be excited about everything that you do. And just be excited that we live in this amazing time, in this amazing decade to come. I love you guys. Peace out.